Part 61. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 606. Yang is still immersed in the movie, as if he didn't notice Fei Jiao's actions. Fei Jiao simply secretly moved again, leaning her closer, then reached out and hugged her in his arms, and wiped her tears with the other hand. She nestled in his arms, her body twitching and twitching. With a slight bow of his head, he could see her little face close at hand. There were tears on his face, and he looked pathetic. I really want to kiss her forehead. He hit remember, has been in love, his first girlfriend who he lost count of how many, beat him every time he did when they are angry and scolded him only Teddy. Beat up every time they did, he was crying all day crying earth swore, and said he could not be so naive to fall in love. However, after the event, I still couldn't move my feet when I met the girl. He probably talked too much about love, which caused him to have little impression of his ex-girlfriends. No, there are also impressions. The only thing that impressed him was Su Mian. As a result, afterwards, she wanted to reconnect with her and return to her hometown as soon as possible after returning home. He thought that his first meeting with her should have been raging for 3 days and nights. But for so long, he and her first handle turned out to be in the context of a movie theater. The progress is too gentle, this is not his love style, but he himself loves it, and actually likes this model very much. The idea of kissing her was not realized until the end of the movie. Afraid of disturbing her and scaring her eyes to get her hands, she scared away. He didn't know why he had such a stingy emotion, and he didn't even think that he was nothing like him. At the end of the movie, she seemed to have reacted. She got up from his arms and bowed her head in shame and apologized to him. Sorry, Fei is sorry, I didn't mean it. The sound is small, like a mosquito. The movie has come to an end, the people next to it are crowding out, everyone is talking aloud about the movie, and the ending song of the movie is also very high. Her voice was drowned in the noise. He heard her, but didn't respond, but took her hand. Let's go, so many people, don't leave. She pulled her hands, probably didn't take it off, so she didn't take it anymore, just shook her head behind him. He turned to look at her, and when someone shoved, he reached out to protect her in his arms. For a short while, he took care of her in his arms. Feeling her soft body leaning on herself. He was still a teenager and had no control over his emotions. It was shameful and hardened. It's really anxious that this road can go a long time. But there was an end to the long journey. As soon as she was out of the screening room, she sighed with relief, immediately flushed with blush, and said to him, "Just now, thank you." Her eyes were still red and swollen. As before, she still cried so much. A movie made her cry like this. I am your student, you should protect it. In fact, he also likes this role-player game for teachers and students. Many things that can't be said can't be done, but they can be completely covered by the relationship between teachers and students. This is a very novel and exciting experience. She smiled slightly, and seemed to accept his statement, then lowered her head and discussed the movie he just watched with him. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 607. Fei Jiao was a little absent-minded, and her eyes turned to Yan Ji's delicate white and greasy hand again and again, and she really wanted to hold her hand again. Just as he reached out her hand, she suddenly hurried forward. There is a small shelf in front, selling some knitwear. What would you say if I knitted a hat for him? She happily turned to ask his opinion. You said, would he like it? I will definitely like it. Fei Jiao froze. It should be troublesome. Your time is so precious, but it is not necessary. Yang interrupted him, give it to the beloved, it doesn't matter if you take the time, it can better express my feelings, what do you think? Fei Jiao nodded joyfully, well, that's fine. Fei Jiao finalized the color, the style of the song selection, and a scarf took more than half a day for two people. But fortunately, each other felt that they had learned a lot, and happily went out of the mall. Yan Ji asked Fei Jiao to send himself to the school and got out of the car. He rarely asked Fei Jiao to drive slowly when you go back. This is about caring about him. Fei Jiao nodded and told her, sleep early at night, don't stay up late to study. Yan Ji nodded and waved at him before walking towards the campus. Fei Jiao kept watching her entering the school, and then she reluctantly retreated. On her birthday, she will give him a scarf. Will she confess to him? He suddenly thought, maybe that day, he could confess to her first. Girls like her should be spoiled. To take this step, he should come first. It wasn't long before Yan Ji returned to the dormitory, and Fei Yun's called. Yan Ji's phone is muted. Except for calling Father Su and Mother Su, she has no habit of talking to others. This call by Fei Yun's is also destined to be left unanswered. So the next day when I went to Fei's makeup class, I saw Fei Yunzi, who was sitting in the living room with a dark face, as soon as I entered the door. Yanj stood scared and didn't move, or Zhang's mother was busy explaining, Ms. Su is here, I have cut fruit here, and Mr. Su should eat some fruit first. Yan Ji shook his head, nodded slightly toward Fei Yun's, said hello, and walked upstairs against the wall. Fei Yun's glared at her back with a cigarette, and gritted his teeth. Yanj knocked on Fei Jiao's door, but instead of opening the door as before, the man shouted in the room, is this Teacher Su? Come in. Yanj pushed in, and saw Fei Jiao lying on his back in bed. She asked in surprise, did you catch a cold? As I walked in, I put my school bag on the table, reached out and touched his forehead, no fever? What's wrong? Before he could respond, her soft, warm hands touched his forehead, accompanied by the faint fragrance of her body. The smell fluttered his face and wrapped him in a moment, making his brain stuck for a moment, and his face rose unknowingly. His shoulder had been dragged by her, no fever pretending to be sick. Hurry up. With this drag, he screamed immediately. Yan Ji looked at him with a puzzled look. Fei Jiao tilted her head and said unnaturally, it's my second uncle. He hit me. He paused, and he was very embarrassed and grieved, my second uncle even treated me like a 3-year-old child. You don't know how hard he started, too hard. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 608. Yan Ji stared at her big watery eyes and asked incredulously, hit you? How did he hit you? Seriously? Where did you hit? I see. Spanked me. Fei Jiao was concerned by Yanj. Although he felt aggrieved and embarrassed, he felt that this was a good opportunity to get closer to Yanj, so he went on and said, it can be severe. I don't know why my uncle has such a big hand, it hurts me. Yanj went to lift the thin blanket he put on his waist. Did you get the medicine? Should you go to the hospital? I'll see if it hurts a lot. Don't do it. Fei Jiao was busy dragging the blanket, but it was still one step behind, and the girl had lifted his blanket aside. His slippery suddenly appeared. Regardless of his face, his whole body is almost ashamed to become red, but he wants to cover his eggs, but the blanket is out of reach, so he can only watch the song's response with a peek, you, hurry up on the blanket for me, don't look at it. Yan Ji obviously didn't expect that he didn't wear any pants, he stunned, and Bai Ninan's face was instantly stained with redness, but as a teacher, at this moment, she was still pretending to calm down and comforting Fei Jiao, it's okay. I am your teacher. It's okay to see. Did you take the medicine? Would you like me to help you? Fei Jiao has been taking medicine for a long time, but when she heard her, she didn't know what kind of psychology she had, and she said, I can't take medicine myself. Zhang Ma puts the medicine on the desk. Come, but I. Before he finished speaking, Yanj pulled the chair to sit in front of the bed, and took the ointment in his hand. He carefully looked at the instructions, which helped him apply the ointment to those wounds. This is modern society, how can I can punish you in this way? What kind of fight against you is so fierce? Stick education is long outdated, and your uncle is too old and stubborn. I hit it with a ruler. Fei Jiao really likes to listen to such words. He complained to his grandparents all morning, but he didn't listen to him one by one. But he was really furious. He didn't feel wronged at first, but being said by Yan Ji, he felt that he was really wronged. However, I couldn't say more. As she touched her buttocks with her finger belly, she did not know whether the ointment was heating or that her fingertips were heating up, making him feel that the place she touched seemed to be hot, and hot the ground is really unbearable. As if even his whole body was on fire. That one is more uncomfortable. He didn't dare to move when lying on the bed, for he was afraid she would see the strange thing there. All his thoughts were concentrated on her fingers. The place touched by her fingers seemed to be trembling. It was a kind of trembling like a high dynasty. Such an applicator was too much suffering. However, he was hoping that he could apply it all over his body. The door was opened at this time. His uncle, who can make teeth gritted, stood at the door with a black face and said to his teacher, Teacher Su, please come out. Yan Ji's eyes couldn't wait to be raised. Wait for me to help Fei finish the ointment. When Fei Yun's heard Yan Ji's words, his face was even darker. He never expected that Yan Ji's makeup today would be touching his nephew's ass. He squeezed the arm of the door tightly, sneered, and looked at Fei Jiao. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 609. The second uncle's cold-looking eyes were too scary. Fei Jiao was so shocked that he immediately woke up from the beauty's den, and quickly turned to the words and said, No need to wipe. Don't dare to make a big move, just do point in front of Yanj. It would be too shame to do point in front of his second uncle. Probably it was the second uncle's coming in that shocked Fei Jiao so much that his patience dropped a bit. He felt that if he was pressed by his teacher Su again, he would have to let go every minute. Yan Ji gently said, and he dropped his head to help Fei Jiao cover the blanket. Then he stood up, but didn't move, but stood a little helpless beside the bed. At the door, Fei Yun saw that the little woman could not come for a long time. He wanted to explode in a minute, but thinking of the little woman's ability to bear, he put up his anger and said to her gently, Mr. Su, please come out. Oh, okay, Yan Ji answered, but did not move, but looked at Fei Jiao. That look was a bit pitiful. Fei Jiao only thought that the song was because of what he said about the second uncle, so he had a fear of this second uncle. He was soothing her, my second uncle is a reasonable person, he probably wants to ask regarding my homework. Teacher Su, you have to tell the truth. Exaggerate as much as possible. He can't stand the second dish of bamboo shoots fried by uncle. Yan Ji slowly walked towards the door. As soon as she went out, Fei Yun slammed the door down. He squeezed Yan Ji's wrist and pushed people into the next room. Next door is Fei Jiao's gym, which has all kinds of equipment. He pressed the words on the door like a fierce kiss. Yanj struggled to push him. But the more he pushed, the tighter he was restrained. His kiss was like a storm, and she was choking. She bit his tongue with anger, so he left her one step ahead. Still fixing her in front of the wall, he stared blankly at her. Yanj bowed his head in an injustice, why are you so fierce? Classmate phase has been broken by you. How dare he and his Tiffany Jiao's ass? Fei Yun's let out 2 breaths and said to her, stand here and don't move, think about what you have done wrong. She stared at him blankly and aggrieved, and he said fiercely, "Dare you move, I'll do you right there." She flinched in fright, and with a look of horror, he turned with satisfaction and walked out. Words of song. Is this punishment for treating her as a primary school student? However, she is the one who is the teacher. Fei Yun's opened the door and went into Fei Jiao's room. He pushed the door very quietly, and his footsteps were even lighter, almost silent like a ghost. Fei Jiao hasn't calmed down from the hot touch of Yanj. He couldn't lie on the bed because of his injured buttocks, so he knelt on his buttocks and stared at Yanj's beauty with his mobile phone in one hand and the other hand on the ups and downs of him blew up the ordinary little brother. When he felt a bit strange looking up by the bed, he saw his uncle standing by the bed. It's almost like a thunderbolt. Fei Jiao, who was about to rush to the cloud, it was instantaneous. Hurrying to hold the phone upside down, rolled up the blanket again and wanted to cover himself, while complaining in guilty conscience, "When did you come in, uncle? Why don't you say a word?" Fei Yun sneered, holding his chest, "It's so small to take out, it really lost our Fei's face. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 610. After Fei Yun's had finished speaking, he turned and left. In the mess and pain of Fei Jiao's wind. Is it small? Is it small? Are they all very big? Fei family gifted? Only his young? Fei Jiao didn't think that his uncle was joking. After all, such a serious person, he had never seen his uncle tell a joke. He really wanted to see his elder uncle's eldest immediately, or go to the men of the Fei family to ask if he was really young. However, I can't pull it off. It's too shameful. He was very upset at the thought that he might be small. Without any venting thoughts, he covered himself in the quilt, anxious to drill a hole to appease the injured little soul. Fei Yun's mood is even more angry than Fei Jiao. His nephew even dared to think about his woman. The key is that he is a woman who is terribly ignorant and unknowing. Really, so annoying. His nephew is so old that he is already considered an adult. Why would she say she touched her buttocks? Don't you know how shy? Don't know if there is a difference between men and women? The wind was generally drawn into the room next door, and Fei Yun's with his lips tightly clasped. He was really angry and pitiful when he saw the little woman who was aggrieved but could not help listening to him. The moment of anger seeing her seemed to return to her belly again rough. He pursed his lips and said nothing, and he lifted his hands and pulled in her skirt. "You, what are you doing? Don't you have something to tell me?" Yan Ji was stunned. This room was separated from Fei Jiao's room by a wall. Her voice was low, for fear that Fei Jiao would hear it. She was frightened and still dodging, she was afraid to be heard by the next cub, and he looked even more angry. She simply pressed her against the wall connected to Fei Jiao's room and entered from behind. There is no prelude, it hurts. She didn't dare to make a sound, and was pressed by him, unable to move, she could only shed tears silently. When he turned her face around, she saw her face full of tears. He froze, slowing down and lowering his head to kiss the tears on her face. She reached out at this time, slap in his face. He froze, and suddenly heard the sound of a door from the next door. Obviously, the little woman was scared too, and she didn't dare to move when she moved stiffly. That place was even more important to break him. He put his hand on her neck and rubbed her red bean mole, trying to appease her. But her body was more tense, a pair of tearful eyes stared at him with great vigilance, for fear that he would continue to be normal. He looked at her indignant look, and a strange thrill was born in his heart. Despite her will, he continued to move slowly. Fei Jiao searched all the way upstairs and downstairs, and couldn't find his second uncle and Yanj, so he stood in the hallway and shouted, Zhang Mom, have you seen my second uncle?" The gym where he was standing was not far away, and he could hear footsteps and questions, and the room could be heard clearly. The woman was scared to move. Fei Yun simply hugged the woman and moved while walking, and then pressed the woman's body against the unlocked door. The woman was frightened, pale and pale. The anger in his eyes turned into begging. He leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Are you going to touch other people's ass? I have something to confess to you. This plane is really special. You can stand it if you can stand it. Don't watch it if you can't stand it. I'm serious. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 611. The little girl turned her head, her tearful eyes narrowed at him, her lips clenched tightly, her face crimson and crimson, almost like a layer of rouge, which made him want to take a bite. This poor little face, before he begged, he had softened. However, thinking that she didn't have a little sense of self-protection, his heart was indignant again. He reached out and squeezed her ass, and her strength was not light at all. She frowned, but did not dare to cry, only a pair of tears. He stared at him with injustice and silent complaints. He couldn't hold her soft, pitiful appearance, sighed, and leaned down to bit her lip. Fei Jiao couldn't find anyone and had to limply return to his room. Listening to the sound of the door next door, the little woman in her arms suddenly fell loose. He squeezed her again. However, the next moment, she stepped on his foot suddenly, and while he was not paying attention, she opened the door and rushed out. He stood at the door, watching her rushing and finishing her skirt and coat, and ran downstairs in an instant. The rushing look made him really angry and wanted to laugh. When she raised her pants, she felt a low hair, and she was still missing her underwear on the ground. Will this little woman come back for panties? As soon as Yang ran downstairs, I heard Zhang's mother at the kitchen door said to her, "Mr. Su, where have you been? The young master has just been looking for you everywhere, but you just want to go upstairs. This fruit plate is annoying for you. The master took it in. The master didn't eat anything all day today. I don't eat anything. You persuade him, you are his teacher. He listens to you best." Yan Ji took the fruit plate and walked upstairs with his head scratched. Her steps were shattered and she didn't dare to step too far. Fei Jiao probably heard Zhang's voice, opened the door, and stood at the door waiting for her. "Mr. Su, where my uncle is looking for you to talk to." He took the photo of Yang and was arrested by his elder uncle. Although he knew that his family would not say it, he still felt inexplicably guilty when facing Yang. Yang calmly replied, "Where I didn't go, I walked around the garden. Your uncle learned from me. How are you studying?" Fei Jiao limped out of the door and took the fruit plate from the singer. He picked up a grape and threw it into the mouth. He complained sadly, "My uncle hasn't had so many things before, and I don't know if he is. It's not the onset of menopause. I want to manage everything." Yan Ji chuckled softly and comforted him with a warm voice, "Your second uncle is also for your good. You should study hard at your age. If you don't study now, you will get nothing." The old-fashioned saying is as if she is many years older than him. Fei Jiao asked her obliquely, "Teacher, why are you so red?" While talking, his nose moved again, and the smell of his teacher always felt strange. Yang was busy before he stepped into the room. "I probably sweated when I went up the stairs. I'll go to the bathroom first." Fei Jiao followed into the room and crawled on the bed again. "Mr. Su, what class are you going to have today?" He really didn't want her to leave so soon, he could only invite her to continue the class. Yang's skirt was cold and unwilling to stay at all, but when he heard Fei Jiao's words, he bit his teeth and put up. When he was out of the bathroom, he said to Fei Jiao with a gentle expression, "In this way, you can crawl on the bed instead of sitting up." After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 612. Yan Ji pulled a chair and sat next to Fei Jiao's bed, helping him explain today's knowledge. When the class was over, Yan Ji carried his school bag and said goodbye to Fei Jiao. I still have something to do today, and I won't stay for dinner. During this time, you will make great progress and work hard. Reach the passing line and the teacher will give you a reward. What is the reward? Could it be a kiss, or a step further? Fei Jiao's eyes lit up, and he looked forward to Yanj with anticipation. Yan Ji pouted and laughed, and reached out and touched his head. Keep on your back, take good care of yourself. Fei Jiao was not on his stomach. He got up and limped and followed behind the song. Baba asked, Teacher, if I reach the passing line, what will you reward me? Yan Ji smiled at him, you'll know by then, don't come out, I'll go. Yan Song has been sent out the door. Fei Jiao helped the door look reluctantly at her back. I always think she walks strangely today. However, the small broken step seemed more gentle to her. Yan Ji went downstairs and told Zhang Ma what she had just said, and then she walked towards the door. Out of the gate, Fei Yun's car had already waited outside the gate, but Yanj, when he hadn't seen it, walked on the sidewalk on his own. Footsteps hurriedly, anxious to fly. Fei Yun's horned a few times and saw that she didn't respond, so he stopped the car and walked to her side, hugging people to the co-pilot position. Help her fasten her seat belt and look at her undulating chest because of anger. He smiled, walk so fast, aren't you afraid of the wind getting into your heart? Yan Song raised his hand to his face. But he hid away and closed the door. He got into the driving position and, while driving the car with a seat belt, said to her, why do you like a person's face so much? Yan's lips were pursed tightly, and a pair of eyes stared forward, her tight little face weeping. Fei Yun's handed her the small nene in her pocket, I picked it up for you. As soon as Yan Ji clapped his hands and opened him, he said fiercely to him, don't you dare do this to me, I. How about you? She gritted her teeth. I scratched you. Fei Yun's laughed, and didn't think she would pick up a knife to hurt others. He took Yanj to the sales office, and Banga bought a 40 square meter renovated house in Beijing. Yan Ji kept his lips pouting all the way. I was annoyed and didn't bother me. When he had paid the full price and completed the formalities and went out of the sales office, she asked him with a serious face, is this what you want to transfer the property to me? Fei Yun shook his head, I gave it to you. He was used to being single, never thinking about women, and never thinking about the trouble of getting married and having children. At first, when she was such a little girl, he didn't know why he was fascinated. Although intoxicated and joyful, when he was awake, he knew that his original intention was not so. She stayed with him for a month, and he bought a house for her to shelter from the wind and rain, which should be regarded as an unlost deal for her. The pleasure that can be bought with money is nothing, and for him, it is not a loss. This is a deal you like. He implemented the matter and reminded himself one-sidedly. Yanj heard the words and did not respond. He thought the little woman had a house and was silly. In the evening Kejin tossed her. However, she gave very few responses. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 613. In the end, Fei Yun's held his words in his arms and asked in the dark, do you like the house? What do you like? Jewelry. Clothes. Yanj said dumbly, I don't like anything. The little woman was still too naive and not practical at all, but it was because she followed him. He touched her long hair, his voice was soft, except for the diamond ring, I can't give it to you, you can tell me anything you want. She was stiff in his arms. It was this rigidity that made him finally understand her thoughts. This little woman, shouldn't you really take this month seriously? He laughed and squeezed her nose. Why, really want a diamond ring? She didn't speak, but suddenly got up and got out of bed. I didn't know what to look for in the drawer near the bed. After a while, I went to bed, touched his hand, and clicked. The cold feeling spread on the wrist. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Where are you from?" "Buy it online." Yanj rode on him, tore his other hand, and pulled out his belt on the ground, binding his hands to the bed. "I can't beat the second uncle, and I'm always bullied by the second uncle. The pinch man also has a third nature, let alone me." She murmured, and tied his legs in pants again. Fei Yun's. At first, he didn't mind letting her play, but now he tied him like this, he suddenly felt insecure. Just to let her stop playing hot, she bowed her head and kissed his chest, and her little hand pinched him somewhere. She also poured wine on him, and threw her over his face to cover him. He was dizzy, and when she was about to be sent to the cloud, there was a pain somewhere in the back, and he instantly fell into the mire from midair. How dare she touch him? Fei Yun's was a spirit, and all the maggots in his head were scared to run away. He tried to stop and stopped. "That kind of place can't be touched, it's dirty." Her soft glutinous voice interrupted him, "I don't use my fingers for the props I bought online." "You can rest assured, second uncle." Fei Yun's couldn't break free. In order to prevent himself from losing his way backwards, he could only half threaten and coax her and said, "A man's forbidden area can't be touched, be good, don't play with fire, be careful of your uncle. Burned out of reason, tossing you to death." The little woman smiled softly and smiled, and somewhere he was scared and persuaded by her again. "Uncle, you said, except for the diamond ring, what you want me to give you, but it is a forbidden area and not a big deal." Fei Yun's. This little woman, her voice is sweet, she is pure and pure, but she is doing this now. It really made him realize what it means to be immortal. When she was about to rush to the sky, she immediately attacked the back lane, making him feel down. Thanks to him having no heart disease, otherwise she would be played like this, and she would be killed a few times. Fei Yun said good things in his mouth, but he grinds his teeth and thinks that once he is liberated, she will cry to beg for mercy. However, Yan Ji did not give Fei Yunzi such a chance. She tossed Fei Yunzi for a long time, and did not let Fei Yun's rush to the sky. When the sky was bright, she dressed and said to Fei Yun's, "I am going to school. I have no time to loosen the second uncle. By the second uncle, I'll dial a number for you, and you can ask your loved ones." She used Fei Yun's cell phone to call Fei Jiao's phone. After putting the cell phone on Fei Yun's chest, she left without looking back. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 614. His nephew kept feeding on the phone. "Second, uncle, are you doing something so early?" "Uncle." Fei Yun still had a pair of underwear on his head. I didn't see Yan Ji leaving, but he heard the sound of opening and closing the door. He gritted his teeth. But the handcuffs included the knot on his leg, and he couldn't get away. After a night of captivity, he had a new understanding of his own little woman. Under her innocent and simple appearance, it was a black-hearted goblin. Since she said go, he absolutely believed that she could not go back again. So even if this wolf howling really didn't want to let his nephew know, Fei Yun's had no choice but to hold his heart helplessly and said to Fei Jiao at the other end of the phone with a calm voice, "Let Song Steward come to the small courtyard of Qingshui Street." "Uncle, why don't you call Mr. Song?" "Just let you call you, hurry." "Oh." Fei Jiao's buttocks still hurt. He really didn't want to work for the second uncle. He reluctantly got up and went downstairs. Realizing that his uncle hadn't hung up yet, he asked, "Uncle, are you still okay?" "Never mind. Oh, then you hung up. After a while, Uncle, are you okay? Why not hang up? Is Song Butler found? You tell Song Butler about the access code of the small yard on Qingshui Street. I don't know the access code over there. Fei Yun's thought about it, he didn't seem to know the password. I usually use fingerprints. He was helpless. Forget it, don't bother Song Butler. Come here. Fei Jiao counseled the second uncle, and when he heard that, he was immediately alert. Uncle, what's the matter with you, my family? You can speak up. Fei Yun's was so angry that he had imagined his teeth. If this picture was seen by his elm-headed nephew, what would happen in the future would be so hot and deep-hearted that he yelled, "Hurry up!" Fei Jiao was almost stumbled by a shudder at the foot of his roar, although he complained in the mouth, "You are too fierce, second uncle." But his pace sped up involuntarily. The second uncle of his family called him now. It must be a very secretive thing. He was really fortunate to be able to see a little secret of his second uncle. Fei Jiao entered the small courtyard with excitement. However, when he opened the door and saw the big red-naked man on the bed in the bedroom, he thought for a moment that he was in the wrong place. So after a brief moment, I turned decisively and walked out of the bedroom, and said to my second uncle who still hadn't hung up the phone, "Uncle, there is a wounded man lying in the bedroom. Would you like to call the police?" When he interrogated, the cell phone on Fei Yun's chest in the bedroom sounded his voice clearly. Fei Jiao. He has a not-so-good guess. Fei Yun's was snarling in the room, "Not yet, come in and untie me." Fei Jiao, this is his second uncle? He trembled into the bedroom and saw the props on the side. Suddenly he understood why his second uncle had not been married. The man he liked was the man, and the second uncle turned up below. The most terrible thing is that the situation of the second uncle is obviously a base with AM tendency. It is too scary. Grandpa knows this. Would he like to make a small report? The handcuffs were strong and they had no keys. Scissors and saws were all used, but still couldn't be undone. How to do? After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 615. Fei Jiao scrapped the power of the 9 cattle and 2 tigers, and went out to find a person who unlocked. Of course, when the unlocker came, the second uncle was already dressed neatly by him. Unlocking the person's gaze at Fei Jiao could not wait to put a cover on his head to cover his face. It's too shameful. When he sent the lock out, he didn't forget to explain, "This is my second uncle, dear, he accidentally lost the key while playing with handcuffs by himself, don't think about it." Can such words make people think more? Fei Yun's was so angry that he gritted his teeth in the room. He went to stop talking at night. Yanj knows the thoughts of this old man. Before Fei Yun's waited for the evening, Yan Ji called him in the afternoon, "I seem to be pregnant. I have been vomiting today. Should I go to the hospital?" Fei Yun's was so angry when he heard his words, "I always wear a condom." "Yanj, are you sure? That should be my illusion." She didn't wait for Fei Yun's to respond, and she hung up the phone. Fei Yun's. He wanted to say, how could she react in less than a month? But she hung up the phone so swiftly, he suddenly remembered, even if there were security measures, there would still be a chance. Because of the phone call in the afternoon, his toss was more moderate at night. "Did you check if you were pregnant?" She was sweating, and had no energy to toss. She just lazily nestled in his arms. "You wear it every time, and there should be nothing wrong, probably because I didn't eat well at noon." The more she said that, the more uncertain he became. The little girl didn't have this knowledge, but he was very clear, even if there were measures, there were always omissions. And he and she sometimes do it a few times a night, not always doing something. He felt that it was necessary for her to look it up and find out earlier that she would be less guilty. So he said, I will accompany Lao Lu to take you to the hospital tomorrow. Old Lu is the exclusive driver of Fei Yun's, and it is estimated that he is the person who knows the most about Fei Yun's and Yanj. No, Yanj said, you can rest assured, don't say no, just because there is, I will not threaten you with children. I am still a student, and I will continue to study for the postgraduate and postgraduate studies. There is no need to worry. I will definitely not entangle you again, even if there are any children, I will deal with them, and will not cause you trouble. He squeezed her hands tightly, speechless. She changed her position and lay back in his arms. Rest assured, I know what I am in your eyes. He touched her head, but did not speak. As she said, she still has great prospects in the future. Perhaps, she will also meet a lover who is about the same age as his nephew, and then marry and have children together. He and she are an intoxicating encounter at midnight, releasing each other's passion, and the beautiful scenery of the good night is intoxicating. However, after dawn, they will always return to their respective positions. He and she are like two people in two worlds and two nodes. He has been very satisfied to have this short month. A pear flower pressed on a begonia, a night of pressure is a dream, but a lifetime, it must be a nightmare for that begonia. He rarely encountered a woman who could catch his heart like her, and he hoped that in the future she would think that he only thought it was a good past, not a nightmare. She was young and didn't understand these things, but he was much clearer than her, so he couldn't stop her because of selfish desires.